G'day, dreamer. Wherever you are, tucked in bed or resting under southern skies, tonight I invite you to close your eyes and step softly into a different kind of time. A sacred time. The dream time. This isn't a place you'll find on any map. It's the beginning of everything. The first Australians call it the dreaming, the timeless space where ancestors walked, sang the world into being, and left their spirits in the land, water, stars, and sky. Every hill, every tree, every river holds a story, and tonight we'll walk among those stories. So take a deep breath. Let the day roll off your shoulders. You're safe here. Let the voices of the old world guide you gently through their stories. From rainbow serpents to sky fathers, emus in the stars to spirit women racing across the night. And before you drift too deep, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel, so these ancient stories can keep traveling across the land, just like the songlines. Now let's begin. The dreaming begins. Before the first wind whispered through the gum trees, before the first kangaroo bounded across red earth, and long before the first stars blinked open in the night sky, there was the dreaming. It wasn't nothingness. Not in the way we think of a black void or a blank slate. It was everything. A deep, breathing silence filled with ancestral spirit. It was timeless, and it still is, for the dreaming is not past. It's eternal. The people of the land, the first Australians, say that the dreaming is always there. It's the ground beneath your feet, the sky above, and the breath in your chest. You don't just listen to Dreamtime stories, you walk them. In this great and sacred silence, beneath a land still unformed and sleeping, the spirits lay waiting. They weren't gods as we know them. They were creators, shapers, givers of rhythm and law. Some were animals, some were human-like, some were both, shifting, fluid, elemental. Each of them held the seed of life in their being, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The first to stir was not seen, but felt. It was a presence, a pulse. The land, still flat and dry, twitched. Beneath the crust, the slumbering spirits began to dream, and with those dreams, the world began. They rose slowly, stretching their long bodies through the soil and stone. Some were serpents, vast and coiled. Others were birds with wings like smoke. There were kangaroo men, women of flame, emus with eyes that glowed like coals, and tall shadowy forms whose breath made the wind. As they moved, they sang, low, ancient songs filled with names and shapes and places that didn't yet exist. And wherever they sang, the land changed. A spirit might drag its belly across the dirt, and in doing so, carve a deep, winding river. Another would strike the earth with its foot, and a mountain would rise, trembling with newness. Trees sprang from footprints, and valleys were carved by sleeping bodies. Waterholes appeared where ancestors had wept or laughed or fought. The land became a memory of their actions, a sacred imprint of their movement, forever written into the country. One spirit, long and gleaming with scales the color of wet clay, rolled across the earth and whispered into the silence. This was the rainbow serpent, still unnamed, still unknown, but destined to shape rivers, floodplains, and destinies. Her eyes blinked open to a land dry and cracking, and she felt thirst. As she moved to quench it, she carved out basins that would one day hold oceans. The ancestors did not just shape the land, they shaped the laws. They made the patterns of kinship, the meanings of birth and death, the purpose of every creature. They sang the roles of wallabies, the dances of ants, the rules for marriage and story and silence. They sang how people must walk the land, and how they must never forget who walked it before them. But not all was harmony.
Some spirits were restless, selfish, angry. They brought fire where water was needed. They chased others from sacred places. Their actions scorched the earth and burned scars into it. Great battles played out across the dreaming plains, not of armies, but of ideas, responsibilities, and consequences. Where a spirit broke the law, the land changed. Rocks split, animals fled, and silence fell. The Dreamtime was not a perfect paradise. It was raw, wild, and filled with lessons, a learning ground for how things must be. And so, the stories came, passed from elder to child, from song to painting, from dance to firelight. Stories of why the kookaburra laughs, why the platypus is so strange, why certain stones must never be moved. One story told of a spirit who tried to shape a river against the will of the rainbow serpent. He dug furiously, wanting the water to flow toward his hunting grounds. The serpent, protective and mighty, watched silently. When he refused to stop, she rose from her bed of stone, scales shimmering with anger, and swallowed him whole. That bend in the river, sharp and sudden, still marks the place where she turned. These weren't just myths, they were laws, they were maps, they were warnings. As each spirit completed their task, they often returned to the land, not disappearing, but becoming part of it. A great ancestor might lie down and turn to stone, their back rising as a ridgeline. Another might become a pool of water, always cool and still, never drying. Others rose into the sky, becoming stars or shadowy shapes among the clouds. Even today, when the wind sings through the spinifex or rustles across the plains, many believe it carries the breath of those dreaming spirits. The people who came after, the caretakers of this memory, were not separate from the dreaming. They were part of it, born into it, connected to it by blood, language, and country. To them, time was not a line but a circle. The past lived in the present. Ancestors walked beside you, not behind. The Dreamtime wasn't long ago, it was now. And so, the first Australians walked the country not as owners, but as listeners. Every rock had a voice, every tree had a spirit, every journey was a remembering. Even today, as highways stretch across the land and cities rise, the dreaming still breathes. It's there in the dust, in the call of the curlew, in the whisper of the eucalypt leaves. It cannot be erased. It can only be respected and told. And now, you too are part of this telling. With every story you hear, every word you carry, you help keep the dreaming alive. Take another breath. Let the stillness settle. The journey has just begun.
Baiame, the Sky Father. When the land had taken shape and the rivers flowed like veins across the dreaming body of the world, a new force stirred above. Not within the soil this time, but high, so high that even the tallest gum trees could not reach. A shape moved behind the veil of the clouds, vast and watchful, with eyes like polished stone and breath that blew through the sky in long, patient sighs. This was Baiame, the Sky Father, the All-Father, the one who sees. He was not the first to wake, but he was among the most revered. Where others carved rivers or sparked bushfires, Baiame brought law, not the kind scrawled on paper or roared through the mouth of a judge, but sacred, ancestral law. Lore that came with the shape of the land, the rhythm of the seasons, the order of the stars. With a great spear in one hand and a message stick in the other, Baiame began his work. But unlike those who came before him, those who gouged valleys or split mountains, Baiame shaped with silence and speech. His tools were ceremony and law, not bone or fang. First, he gave the people knowledge, not the kind you can find in books or bottle into words, but deeper. He taught them how to live with the land, not on it. He showed them the sacred sites, places where spirits still stirred beneath the surface. He marked these with trees, stones, and carvings, and told the people to never forget them. These places still exist. Some are caves etched with ochre figures, some are smooth boulders etched with circles and tracks, and some are simply clearings where the air feels heavier, sacred. In New South Wales, the Wonnarua people remember the Baiame Cave, a towering rock shelter near Milberdale, painted with his figure, arms outstretched, embracing the land he gave shape to. With the flick of a branch, he called forth animals from their silence. Kangaroos, dingoes, wombats, each given its place, its rhythm, its path through life. Birds filled the sky, croaking and laughing, and the fish flicked silver through the creeks, fresh born from his breath. But Baiame didn't act alone. He brought with him his 2 sons, Daramulan and Bunan. Each of them was tasked with continuing the sacred work. Daramulan, whose story is often told alongside his father's, would later become the guardian of men's law and ceremony, his one-legged figure carved into sacred trees. Bunan, though less known in some nations, was the gentle teacher, guiding people through the transition from childhood to adulthood, a rite of passage still remembered in lore. Together, Baiame and his sons taught the people the ceremonies of life, how to hunt with respect, how to marry within the bounds of kinship, how to mourn with song and silence. These were not rules imposed, but wisdom shared, ways of living that bound the people to their country like threads in a vast living tapestry.
When a person was born, they were not just a child, they were a continuation of the dreaming. Their skin, their name, their place in the mob, all of it had been sung into being long before their first breath. Baiame made sure the people knew this, that no one walked alone, that each life echoed with the steps of the ancestors, but not all was peace. As Baiame moved through the land, he saw the damage left by others, spirits who had acted without care, mountains split by greed, rivers poisoned by pride. He saw people quarreling over land that was never theirs to own. He saw fire used not to cleanse, but to destroy. And in these moments, the Sky Father's gaze grew heavy. He did not shout. He did not strike. Instead, he reminded. With quiet ceremony, he showed the people how to return to balance. He taught them to dance in patterns that mimicked the stars, to sing songs that traveled from one tribe to the next, carrying knowledge, not war. He reminded them that all things are connected, that what you do to the land, you do to yourself. And so, the songlines were strengthened, invisible trails that wove through the country like spirit webs, not just paths for walking, but for remembering. Each songline carried the stories of Baiame's journey and those of his sons, carved into verse and rhythm. When people followed the songlines, they weren't just moving through space, they were moving through sacred time. As his work neared completion, Baiame gathered the elders. He stood upon a high plateau, arms open wide, and whispered his final teachings. He told them he would not stay, that he belonged to the sky, but he would always watch, always guide. And with that, he rose. Some say he became a star. Others say he stretched himself across the sky's arch, his arms still outstretched, protecting the world below. The Milky Way, the dreaming track of the spirits, carries his breath. Every time it arcs across the night, it's a reminder of the law he left behind. And still, his sons walk the land, in story, in bark paintings, in the quiet hush before ceremony. Daramulan watches over the Bora rings, where boys become men. Bunan lives in the laughter of children learning their first dances. And Baiame? He lives in the stillness of dusk, when the sky glows ochre and time folds back on itself. You can feel him then, a warm presence in the breeze, a knowing hush in the trees. He is not gone, he is just above. Baiame is known across many First Nations, though the names may shift, Baiame, 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 yet the essence remains. He is the creator, the designer, the one who stretched the sky like a dome over the earth. His home lies beyond reach, beyond touch, in a place where the horizon meets the eternal. He descended once, long ago, when the land was still learning itself. He stepped softly, though the weight of his presence made the stones sing. His feet touched the grass, and life bowed to greet him. Even the wind grew still, listening.
The rainbow serpent awakens. Before rivers flowed, before rain ever fell, the land was dry, not just parched, but anciently, achingly empty. It was silent, save for the low hum of ancestral breath beneath the crust of the earth. No trees rustled, no water shimmered, no life stirred. But then came a sound, a deep shifting, a ripple beneath the ground, like thunder held in the belly of the world, and with it, a presence. From the great earth's core, something immense uncoiled. It was long, unimaginably long. Its body glistened with colors not yet named, reds that shimmered like bloodstone, greens bright as eucalyptus leaves, blues deep as the night ocean. As it moved, the colors danced across its skin like sunlight on water. This was the rainbow serpent. She was not born. She had always been, waiting, coiled beneath the surface, dreaming the world into being. Her breath was the wind. Her eyes were twin suns. Her body was strength and grace, coiled into potential. With the slow rising of her head, she split the ground and brought it to life. The rainbow serpent, called by many names across the land, Ngalyod, Yurlungur, Wagil, Kunmangur, is one of the most widespread and sacred figures in Aboriginal cultures. Though her form and deeds vary between nations, the essence remains. She is the giver and taker of water, the maker of paths, the guardian of life and sacred law. As she began to move across the ancient earth, her belly carved deep channels into the ground. These would become the rivers, the arteries of the continent. She pushed upward into the stone, and it broke into mountains. Her long tail twisted, forming valleys and billabongs. Wherever she passed, life followed. But she was not alone in her journey. In some stories, she rose in search of her children, the frogs, snakes, and lizards who had hidden in fear from the heat. In others, she chased ancestral beings across the land, shaping it as she pursued. Some say she carried water in her great body, and as she slithered, she let it spill, nourishing the land, giving drink to the thirsty soil. And yet, the rainbow serpent was not merely a giver of gifts. She was power, raw, sacred, and immense. She demanded respect. When the people walked the land, they did so carefully. They knew her tracks, long sinuous shapes carved into the rock, the sudden dips that marked her rest places. They knew never to bathe in certain waterholes without ceremony, never to take too much, never to laugh too loudly near the sacred sites, for the serpent was always listening. If angered, she would rise. When the rains came too hard, washing away camps and trees, they said it was the serpent's fury. When lightning split the sky and thunder cracked the hills, it was her voice, deep and shaking. When floods surged across the plains, swallowing roads and fences in modern times, many elders still whisper, "She's waking, she remembers." But back in the Dreamtime, before memory and history split apart, the rainbow serpent moved with grace. She met other ancestral beings, great spirit animals who sang their own stories into the land. Some she helped, some she warned, others she challenged. One tale from the Arnhem Land tells of a time when two brothers built a dam to block the water, thinking to keep it for themselves. The rainbow serpent saw their greed and thrashed with rage. Her body coiled and struck, sending the dam crashing down, and the brothers swept into the sea. Their bones became coral, yet she was not without kindness.
In times of drought, when the sun cracked the mudflats and the animals grew thin, the rainbow serpent would return to sleep beneath the land. As she turned, her belly pressed down, releasing water from hidden springs. Life would bloom in her wake. The bush would green, frogs would sing, and the people would dance in gratitude. Among the Noongar people of the Southwest, the rainbow serpent is Wagil, a guardian who shaped the Swan River and dwells within its bends. She watches over the land and punishes those who disrupt the harmony. Miners, bulldozers, those who dig too deep without asking. For even now, the rainbow serpent remains awake beneath the land, coiled and patient. In ceremonies, her spirit is called upon, painted onto bodies, carved into rocks, sung in songlines that stretch from desert to sea. Her image, always undulating, never still, is a reminder that life is movement, that water must flow, that law must be honored. She is often seen in the sky, her form refracted into the colors of the rainbow after the rain. This too is her path, a bridge between the land and the heavens. When children ask where the rainbow comes from, elders might smile and say, "That's her tail, slipping back into the sky." She is both male and female in some tellings. She gives birth to life and swallows those who disobey sacred ways. Her body holds the world's memory. Her spirit is older than the stars. And though the world has changed, though roads now cut through her tracks and cities grow upon her resting places, her story has not faded. It lives in the memory of country, in the stories of elders, in the quiet ripple of a creek at dusk, when the light turns red and the world remembers itself. So the rainbow serpent moved, shaped, and slept. And the land she left behind was no longer flat or lifeless. It pulsed with color, song, and sacred lore. And those who walked it after, the people of the dreaming, walked with care, knowing they were not alone. They were always walking in her tracks.
Wandjina, the Rainbringers. In the remote reaches of the Kimberley, that vast, ancient corner of northwestern Australia, the rocks breathe with memory. The cliffs, the caves, the overhangs all seem to watch in silence. And if you walk softly enough, if you listen not with your ears but with your spirit, you might feel it too, the presence of the Wandjina. The Wandjina are not spoken of lightly. They are sacred, powerful, and still alive in the land. They are the rainbringers, the cloud spirits, the guardians of water and weather. Their faces, painted onto the cave walls in white ochre with bold black eyes and no mouths, stare out across country with a watchful presence that has endured for thousands upon thousands of years. They are among the oldest continuous spiritual figures in the world. Some of their images have been dated to over 4,000 years, but their story reaches further back, beyond time, into the dreaming. The Wandjina were ancestral beings who arrived during the Dreamtime, gliding across the sky like thunderclouds, with halos of mist and lightning flashing from their brows. They came not to conquer, but to care. They carried the water within them, not just physical water, but the essence of nourishment, of life itself. Without them, the world would crack and crumble. When they arrived, the land was raw. The rivers flowed, shaped by the rainbow serpent, but the air was dry and the trees cried out for drink. The people were hungry, their skin tight with thirst. The clouds hung heavy above the ranges but would not break. Then, the Wandjina descended. They came in silence, not because they had no voices, but because their power was beyond speech. It is said they had no mouths to remind the people that true power does not need to shout. Their presence alone was law. With their wide black eyes and crowned heads, they glided across the land like shadows on storm winds. Wherever they went, rain followed. The dry grass turned green beneath their steps. Billabongs brimmed with cool, sweet water. Fish danced once more in the creeks. The trees lifted their arms to the sky in gratitude. The people watched and wept, for life had returned, not with fire, not with flood, but with sacred rain that came like a blessing. The Wandjina moved through country, painting the world with clouds and mist. They brought the wet season, the monsoon, what the people of the north call the Wunambul, Ngarinyin, and Warora peoples, the three nations who still keep the stories of the Wandjina alive.
These spirits didn't just bring water, they brought law, ceremony, and balance. They taught the people how to call the rain with dance and song, how to paint the signs that invite the clouds and whisper to the sky. They showed which sites were sacred, where the water would always return, even in the driest years. To the untrained eye, a Wandjina painting might seem still, but to those who know, it pulses. The artwork is not decorative, it is spiritual, living. The white ochre must be reapplied by initiated custodians, generation after generation. To neglect the Wandjina is to risk drought, disaster, imbalance. The paintings themselves are shaped with care. The round faces outlined in thick lines, eyes wide and all-seeing, heads encircled by arcs and strokes that represent lightning, clouds, and storms. Their chests are marked with linear lines, breath, rain, thunder. Some say the Wandjina created the first people of the north, that they took spirit and earth and shaped it into flesh, that the people who live there now are direct descendants, not metaphorically but spiritually linked, still bound to their ancestors by blood, land, and ceremony. One of the most sacred sites lies in Wandjina Gorge, where dozens of these figures line the cave walls. Their presence is overwhelming. Tourists may marvel, but for the traditional owners, these are not art. They are ancestors. A young boy once asked an elder, "Why don't they have mouths?" The elder replied, "Because their voice is the rain. When it speaks, you listen." The Wandjina are not gentle spirits. They are not soft. Their power is vast, and their moods can turn. If disrespected, if sacred places are disturbed, if law is broken, they can withhold the rains. They can bring storm and lightning. They can flood the land in fury. There are stories of hunters who trespassed where they shouldn't, ignoring the signs. They laughed as they walked into sacred country, throwing rocks, carving names. The clouds darkened. A storm rolled in without warning. The river swelled in a matter of minutes, swallowing their path. When their bodies were found days later, the elders only said, "They were warned. The Wandjina protect what's theirs." But for those who show respect, who walk gently, who remember, the Wandjina offer protection. They are called upon during initiation ceremonies, painted on shields and body, invoked in rain dances to call balance back to the land. Their energy flows through songlines that stretch across the Kimberley, linking cave to waterhole, mountaintop to sea. Their breath is the wind that cools the skin before rain. Their eyes are the first stars before nightfall. In some tales, the Wandjina return to the sky after shaping the land, becoming clouds themselves. Others say they return to the caves, merging with the walls, resting in stillness but always watching. Even now, when the wet season begins, when the first fat drops of rain slap the dust, many still look to the clouds and say, "The Wandjina have come back." And in that moment, everything feels older. The hills seem wiser. The air feels sacred. You understand that you're walking through memory, not your own, but the land's. The Wandjina remind us that country is never just dirt, that water is never just wet, that every storm carries a story, and every cave wall a face that remembers more than we ever will. They are not past, they are not gone, they are present. And if you ever find yourself in the Kimberley and the wind begins to stir and the sky grows heavy, remember this: the rain does not fall by chance. It falls when the Wandjina say it's time.
Tiddalik, the thirsty frog. Long ago, in the time before the rivers sang and the grass whispered with dew, the world faced a great stillness. It was not the stillness of sleep or peace. It was a heavy, gasping stillness, the kind that comes when the land cannot breathe. There was no water. The creeks were dry scars in the ground. The billabongs were empty bowls. The air was thick and hot, pressing down like a wet blanket. The animals moved slowly, their tongues lolling, their eyes dulled by thirst. Birds no longer sang. The trees stood brittle, their bark cracking in the heat. And at the center of it all was a frog. His name was Tiddalik. Now, Tiddalik was no ordinary frog. In the Dreamtime, all creatures carried the power of the ancestors, and Tiddalik's power was deep, hidden behind a broad, quiet face and a slow, blinking gaze. He had been born of the wetlands, shaped from mud and spirit, and gifted with the ability to drink more than any other being alive. But with great gifts come choices, and Tiddalik made a dangerous one. One morning, before the sun had fully stretched its arms across the sky, Tiddalik awoke with a thirst like no other. Not the thirst of a dry throat or an empty belly. This was a hunger in his soul, a craving not for survival, but for possession. And so he drank. He waddled to the nearest pool and gulped it down. Not a sip, not a mouthful, the whole thing, every drop. The insects scattered, confused. The lilies sank. Still, he was not satisfied. He found a stream, gurgling weakly beneath a fallen tree. He sucked it dry like a reed. Then a river, then a lake. Everywhere he went, water vanished. The land began to crack. The animals came out from their hollows, their dens, their shade, and stared in horror. Tiddalik had grown enormous. His body swelled like a rain cloud, his belly taut and gleaming. He squatted in silence, eyes half-lidded, bloated with the water of the world. "Why?" the echidna asked, her voice dry as dust. "Why would you do this?" But Tiddalik did not answer. He sat in his wet greed, silent and unmoving. The animals gathered in panic. The kangaroo coughed. The emu's feathers drooped. Even the kookaburra, who usually found a laugh in anything, sat sullen on a dry branch. They needed a plan. "We must make him give it back," said the wombat, ever practical. "But how?" asked the goanna. "He holds all the water inside him." "If we cannot take it by force," said the wise old turtle, "we must find another way." They thought. They argued. They sat in silence, listening to the creak of the thirsty trees. And then the kookaburra, perking up a little, had an idea. "We'll make him laugh." The others blinked. "What?" "If we can make Tiddalik laugh," said the kookaburra, "perhaps the water will burst from him. Perhaps he'll laugh so hard he can't hold it in." It was worth a try. So the kookaburra stepped forward, puffed out his chest, and began to perform. He flapped, tumbled, squawked, and chattered. He mimicked the emu's walk. He made a mess of the kangaroo's hop. He tripped over a stone and landed square on his tail, feathers all a mess. The animals howled with mirth, but Tiddalik only blinked. Next came the wombat, who waddled in circles and danced a clumsy jig. The possum swung from a dry branch and squeaked out a song. Even the dingo joined in, doing a ridiculous twirl on two legs. Still, Tiddalik sat. His throat bulged with the weight of his stolen bounty. His wide frog mouth didn't even twitch. Despair began to settle. The animals looked at one another. Their tricks had failed. But then, just as the last hope was fading, a small creature stepped forward.
It was the nabby, a long-necked eel, twisting and bending its body in the strangest of ways. It spun, it wriggled, it tied itself in knots, then rolled like a wheel down a slope. At first, nothing. Then, a sound, a small gurgle, a twitch at the corner of Tiddalik's mouth. The animals froze, and then he laughed. It started as a rumble, then a croak, then a great booming ribbit that echoed across the dry plains. Tiddalik laughed so hard that his whole body wobbled, his limbs kicked in the air, and his belly, swollen with rivers and lakes, began to tremble. With each guffaw, water sprayed from his nostrils, it shot from his mouth, it poured from his eyes, streams erupted from his sides. The earth shuddered and the cracks filled with water. The rivers flowed again. The billabongs brimmed. The creeks danced and shimmered. The trees straightened their spines. The frogs sang once more. And Tiddalik, emptied and exhausted, shrank back to his normal size. He looked around, confused, embarrassed. But the animals did not scold him. They had their water, they had their life, and they had learned something deeper than anger. Tiddalik had taught them about greed, not with words, but with consequence. From that day on, they remembered. They told his story to the young, about the frog who drank too much, and how balance was restored with laughter and cleverness, not violence. And even now, when the rains disappear and the creeks grow thin, people still tell the story of Tiddalik. They remind each other, water is not something to hoard, it belongs to all. In some places, the rocks still bear his shape, smooth, round, frog-like boulders guarding sacred watering holes. Elders pass by and nod, saying softly, "He's watching, he remembers." And when the wet season finally returns and the frogs burst into chorus across the bush, you might hear it, a chuckle, deep and round, echoing through the night. Tiddalik is laughing again.
Daramulan and the sacred tree. In the shadow of the mountains where the mists cling to the ridges and the trees grow tall and ancient, a presence watches from between the trunks. Not an animal, not a spirit of fire or storm, but a being of lore, carved into memory and whispered into the hearts of ceremony. His name is Daramulan. He is the son of Baiame, the Sky Father, and the keeper of men's law. His figure looms not in flesh and blood, but in the silence of sacred spaces, in the shimmer of moonlight through the gum leaves, and most of all, in the carvings of the sacred tree. He walks with one leg, though no one sees him move. His other leg, it's said, rests in the spirit world, anchored to something older, deeper. His body is tall and curved, his chest broad, his arms long and embracing. He has the face of a man and the mind of the sky, and he listens. To understand Daramulan, you must first understand the Bora grounds, the sacred spaces where boys are made into men. These are not just clearings in the bush. They are gateways, circular rings of earth pressed flat by feet that have danced for thousands of years. Sometimes they're joined by winding paths. Sometimes they're surrounded by carved trees, old eucalypts marked with spirals, animal tracks, and human figures. And it is there, at the edge of these places, that Daramulan waits. He is the guide, the transformer, the one who oversees the passage from childhood to responsibility. Among the Yuin people of the Southeast and many other nations of New South Wales, Daramulan is sacred. His name is not spoken aloud without purpose. His figure is not drawn without permission. He is present during the most serious of ceremonies, the initiations where boys learn the stories of the dreaming, the lore of kinship, the songs of the land, and the paths of the ancestors. When a boy is ready, when he has walked the right songlines, learned the words, stood still enough to hear the breath of the country, he is brought to the Bora Ring. There, surrounded by elders and spirits, he begins to shed the skin of childhood. And there, Daramulan waits. The elders might draw his shape into the dirt, the curved figure, the large head, the single leg. They might gesture toward a tree where his image is carved, high and hidden, a mark for those who know where to look. The tree might stand alone, or among others, wrapped in bark and time. These trees, known as carved trees or dendroglyphs, are among the most sacred living records in the world. They are not just art, they are portals. Daramulan's presence lives in these trees, not in bark alone, but in the very sap. The tree grows, and so too does the memory. To cut one down is to sever a link to the dreaming. To touch one without reason is to risk imbalance. Only the initiated may stand close. In ceremony, Daramulan does not speak. but his silence holds power. He teaches through absence, the wisdom of restraint, the strength in stillness. He is not like his father, Baiame, who once walked the land to lay down law. Daramulan is more elusive, more spectral. He is the keeper of secrets, the one who reminds young men that knowledge is not given freely. It must be earned, honored, carried with care. He also carries the bull roarer, a small flat piece of carved wood attached to a string, spun in circles through the air. When it spins, it hums. No, it roars. A low, haunting sound that trembles through the trees like thunder caught in a box. This is Daramulan's voice. Only men are allowed to hear it. Only the initiated can hold it.
Its sound is not just a warning or a song, it is the call of the ancestor. When it echoes across the ceremony ground, the spirits gather. The sky stills. The boy becomes more than a boy. He becomes part of the chain. But Daramulan is not only a figure of ritual, he is also a presence of morality, of balance. There is an old tale told among the people of the coast, where the sea meets the cliffs and the bush spills down in rivers of green. It tells of a young man who refused to learn. He was impatient, clever, and proud. He thought himself above the elders, above the traditions. He mocked the ceremonies, laughed at the dances, and scoffed at the carvings on the sacred trees. One night, while the others rested, he snuck into the Bora ring. He took the bull roarer and spun it, laughing as it howled across the hills. The sound was loud, too loud, and the wind stopped. The trees shivered, and from the shadows, Daramulan emerged. Not angry, not violent, just present. The young man dropped the bull roarer. He fell to the earth, his pride crumbling. He begged. But Daramulan did not need to punish. The boy had punished himself by breaking the chain, by ignoring the weight of the ancestors, by calling a spirit without respect. From that day on, he changed. He walked softly. He listened. He carved Daramulan's figure into a tree, and every season he returned to remark it, to keep it alive. And the land forgave him. This is the way of Daramulan. He is not wrathful. He is not cruel, but he demands reverence. He is the one-legged spirit who dances through ceremony, the echo in the wind when a bull roarer spins, the carved figure on the old tree, half faded but never forgotten. He is a reminder that becoming a man is not about strength or speed. It is about responsibility, about connection, about knowing your place in the great dreaming web. And even now, when the Bora rings lie silent, and many of the carved trees have been lost to axes and roads, his spirit still walks the land, still listens, still waits. And in the forests of the southeast, where the mists rise like smoke and the birds call in secret tongues, Daramulan's tree still stands, hidden from most, but never forgotten. His story is carved in the wood and in the hearts of those who remember.
The emu in the sky. Long before telescopes pierced the heavens and named stars after foreign gods, the first peoples of Australia looked up and saw stories, not in the stars themselves, but in the spaces between. Where others saw scattered dots, they saw creatures, paths, ancestors, and high among them, gliding silently across the arc of the Milky Way, was the shape of an emu. Not just any emu. The emu in the sky, an ancient spirit, a celestial being whose body stretches across the night, dark and grand, made not of light, but of shadow. She has no single name, for across the continent she is known in many tongues, by the Burong of Victoria, the Kamilaroi and Ualai of New South Wales, the Wiradjuri, the Ngarrindjeri, and many more. But her form is constant, her head nestled near the Coalsack Nebula beside the Southern Cross, her long neck curling down the Milky Way, her body trailing wide and dark. She appears only in certain seasons, and when she does, the people know what it means. It is time for emu eggs. But her story is older than any season. It is carved in stone, whispered in nighttime ceremony, and told in quiet voices beneath starlight. The story begins in the dreaming, when the land was young and the sky still being woven into patterns. There was once a great emu spirit who walked the land, tall and swift, with feathers like smoke and eyes bright as firelight. Her name, though lost to some, was sacred to others, passed down only through ceremony. She was proud, fierce, and fiercely protective of her young. Each season, she laid her eggs in a hidden place, far from others, beneath tall grass and with wide skies above. Her chicks, when they hatched, ran quick and light-footed, following her like shadows. But the land was hungry. And one day, a young hunter from a neighboring clan came across her nest. He was not wicked, just careless. He had wandered far from his camp in search of game. The kangaroos had vanished. The fish hid in the deeper pools. His belly rumbled, and his pride stung. He had to bring something home, and there, nestled among twigs and feathers, he found the eggs, smooth, dark, warm. He hesitated. He knew they belonged to someone. He could feel it in his blood. The land was watching. The sky was still. But hunger whispered louder. He took them. One by one, he packed them into his dilly bag and turned back toward camp, not knowing the emu spirit had returned. She arrived in silence, but the grass bent with her fury. She saw the empty nest. She saw the tracks, and her cry shook the trees. The hunter, far away, stopped mid-step. He felt something shift, a heaviness in his chest. He looked up, and the stars blinked. That night, the sky changed. Where once had been open space, darkness gathered. A shape formed, a head, a long neck, a powerful body. The emu in the sky had risen, not to guide, but to mourn. She stretched herself across the heavens so that her sorrow could be seen forever. From that day, she no longer walked the land. Her spirit left the earth and moved into the stars, where she watches over her eggs from above. She watches for those who take without permission. She watches for those who forget to ask. But she does not only mourn, she teaches. Each year, when her shape appears in full in the sky, head, neck, body, and legs, the people know it is time. Time to gather emu eggs, but only with balance, only with law. Not all the eggs, not from all nests, just enough.
Children are taught to find the emu in the sky before gathering. If she is fully visible, it is safe. If she begins to sink into the western horizon, it is time to stop. The chicks are hatching. The cycle is turning. The stars guide the hand. The dreaming guides the heart. Among the Kamilaroi people, the dark shape of the emu is called Gawargai. She rises in autumn, just after sunset, and sets with winter. As she disappears, the people rest from hunting. The season has changed. Rock engravings near Ku-ring-gai, north of Sydney, show large emus carved into the sandstone, their heads pointing toward where the celestial emu rises. These are not just artworks, they are calendars, sky maps, ancestral reminders etched in stone. The emu in the sky connects time, law, and life. She is part of the great songlines that stretch across Australia, linking land to star, star to story, story to law. Each group may know her differently, but the message remains. Take only what you need and never forget who watches. One story tells of a young girl who, many years after the hunter's mistake, sat beneath the night sky and stared upward. She saw the shape of the emu, and her grandmother told her the tale. The girl listened carefully, and when she grew old enough to join the egg hunt, she was the one who stopped her brothers from taking too many. She pointed to the sky and said, "She's watching, she remembers," and the land gave thanks. Even today, when astronomers map the Milky Way, they often speak of its dark dust lanes. But for First Nations people, those dark shapes are not just space, they are presence, life, memory. When you look up and see the stars, pause, look between them, find the emu. She is there, silent, wide-winged, her head forever near the Southern Cross. A reminder that the dreaming is not just beneath your feet, it is above you too. And the sky, like the land, has its law.
Bunjil the Eagle. High above the grasslands and wooded ridges of what is now called Victoria, the sky opens wide like a great canvas, and across it, soaring with silent wings stretched like spears of shadow, moves Bunjil, the great eagle, the Sky Father, the protector of law and life. He is not just an eagle. He is the creator ancestor of the Kulin Nation, the group of First Nations that include the Wurundjeri, Boonwurrung, Taungurung, Djadjawurrung, and Wathaurong peoples. Bunjil shaped the world with precision and care, and when his work was done, he rose into the heavens, not to escape the earth, but to watch over it, forever. The dreaming of Bunjil begins with silence and flight. Before the trees sprouted and the rivers carved through basalt and clay, the land was flat and restless. A sky stretched across it, vast and empty. But from that sky came movement, the beating of wings, slow, rhythmic, ancient. Bunjil came down not with thunder, but with grace. He was shaped like a wedge-tailed eagle, the largest bird of prey on the continent, with feathers that shimmered like charcoal in sunlight, and eyes that burned with gold. His wings, when spread, could shade a valley. His beak, though curved and sharp, spoke not of violence, but of wisdom. He looked at the formless land and saw potential. With a glance, he carved mountains. With his breath, he summoned rivers. With a sweep of his wing, he raised the trees. And when he touched the dust, he created people from the earth itself. But Bunjil did not act alone. Like all great creators in the dreaming, he worked with others, his people, his council of beings. There was Wang, the clever crow, who helped Bunjil bring language and knowledge to the land. Wang was his counterbalance, playful, talkative, sometimes mischievous. Where Bunjil was solemn and high-flying, Wang was grounded and curious. Together they balanced wisdom with action. There were the two Bram Bram brothers, who taught the people how to hunt, how to move with the seasons, how to respect the animals they tracked. There was Palian the bat, Jurt Jurt the Nankeen kestrel, and Thara the quail, each given a role in the formation of life, each assigned a duty in the pattern of things. Bunjil gathered them all. They met on the highest hill, beneath the watchful stars, and there he gave the law. He did not shout. He did not command. He spoke in slow, careful tones, and the land listened. The law of Bunjil was not written. It was lived. It guided how people related to one another, who could marry whom, which groups belonged to which moiety, how food was shared, how country was cared for. He gave roles to the clans. Some were Bunjil moiety, others Wang moiety, and this balance was sacred. The land was a body, he said, and every part of it, from the stones to the clouds, had to be respected like kin. Rivers were veins, hills were ribs, trees were lungs. To harm one part without cause was to injure the whole. But soon, Bunjil saw change coming. The people had grown, not in number, but in noise. Their ceremonies became rushed. Their fires spread carelessly. They forgot the sacred water holes. They took more than they gave.
Bunjil watched from the sky and felt a heaviness settle on his wings. He called a council. The spirits gathered again, this time with worry in their eyes. "What must we do?" asked Jurt Jurt. "Teach again," said Bunjil. "And if they do not listen, we must return to the sky." But he gave them one last gift. He told them the stories of the land, how the rivers were formed, how the animals were named, how the winds traveled. He told them to pass these on, from elder to child, from mouth to firelight. And when he had finished, he stood at the edge of the world, where the earth meets the heavens, a place known now as Will-im-e Mooring, or Mount William. There he spread his wings one final time, but he did not rise alone. He called upon Wirrap, the wind spirit, who lives in the corners of storms and the breath between trees. Wirrap answered, forming a great whirlwind that spiraled into the sky like a rope made of cloud. Bunjil stepped into the whirlwind. So did his people, the bat, the crow, the kestrel, the quail, and one by one they rose into the sky, their bodies becoming stars, their shapes forming constellations that mark the seasons to this day. Now, when the wedge-tailed eagle flies low over country, the people say, "Bunjil is watching." When the wind rises suddenly, they whisper, "Wirrap is speaking." Bunjil did not abandon the world. He simply returned to the sky so he could see it all. His stories live on in the creation cave at Gariverd, also known as the Grampians. His figure is painted on rock shelters, his wings outstretched, his eyes forever open. His spirit moves through the land like an invisible current, felt, not seen. To this day, the descendants of the Kulin nation carry his lore. His law is woven into welcome ceremonies, into dances that mimic flight, into stories passed on with care and pride, and his message remains clear: respect the land, respect each other. Know your place in the great circle. Fly high, but never forget the ground that gave you wings. And when the sun sets over the plains, casting long shadows through the gum trees, some say they've seen him, a dark shape gliding just below the stars, his wings spread wide, carrying the dreaming across the sky.
The moon and the crocodile. High in the sky, above the trees and rivers, the moon glides in silence. It waxes and wanes, rising fat and bright before fading to a sliver. It keeps time with the tides and watches the earth like an old, remembering eye. But the moon was not always a cold rock in the sky. Long ago, in the dreaming, the moon was a man. He had a name, Ngalindi, the Moon Man. In the lands of the Yolngu people of northeastern Arnhem Land, his story is remembered in song and dance, carved into bark paintings and passed from elder to child under the cool glow of night. His journey is not just a tale of the heavens. It is a story of vanity, punishment, and the eternal cycle of rebirth. Ngalindi was strong and proud. His body shone with light. He walked tall across the land, not with humility, but with pride swelling in his chest like a storm about to break. He believed himself invincible, unaging, untouched by the pain of others. Each day he grew fatter, not only in body, but in ego. He had many wives and many children, but he treated them poorly. He did not share his food. He did not listen. His hunger was endless, and his kindness wore thin. The people began to talk. His wives, though once loyal, grew weary of his cruelty. His children cried from neglect, and still he preened in the mirror of the billabong, admiring the shape of his reflection. One night, under a sky thick with stars, the women gathered. Enough was enough. Together they lifted their digging sticks, the milk Ari, and attacked him. He fled into the dark bush, bleeding from wounds of both flesh and pride. Each strike took a piece of him. His round body, once full and luminous, began to shrink. Blood dripped into the sand. His light faded. He stumbled to the edge of the earth, climbed into the sky, and died. The people wept, for despite his flaws, he had been part of the balance. But the story does not end there. After 3 days, he rose again, thin, barely visible, but alive. Each night, he grew a little stronger, a little rounder, until he returned to his full shape. But the scars remained. And so, the cycle began. Fullness, punishment, death, rebirth. Even now, the Yolngu people look up and see Ngalindi's body, waxing, waning, punished and returned. They do not see a distant moon. They see a reminder that even the proud must fall, that all things must die to be reborn. But this is not the only tale of the moon. Far to the north, where the mangroves twist like black veins into the sea, and the air hangs thick with salt and insects, another story lingers. There, the moon is not a man, it is prey, and the hunter is a crocodile. Among the Kunwinchku people of Western Arnhem Land, the story tells of the moon and the crocodile, locked in an endless cycle of chase and escape. The crocodile, ancient, silent, deadly, once ruled both land and water. He was a spirit being, vast in size, older than the cliffs. He moved not in haste, but with certainty, knowing that all things would eventually come to him. The moon in those days was cheeky, a trickster. He danced across the night sky, taunting the crocodile below, flashing his light in rippling waves, teasing with tides and shadows. But the crocodile did not forget. He watched. And one day, when the moon had drifted low, the crocodile rose from the river. He leapt, jaws wide, teeth gleaming, and bit the moon clean through. The sky darkened, the tides shifted, the land fell into silence. But the moon would not die so easily.
From the wound, light bled. Slowly, it reformed. Over days and nights, it pieced itself back together until it shone once more, whole but wary. And so the chase continues. The moon descends, the crocodile lunges, and each month a bite is taken. The people say this is why the moon disappears, why it shrinks from full to crescent. Each phase is another bite, another chase, another reminder that the world is shaped not by stillness, but by conflict and return. These stories of Ngalindi, of the crocodile, are not simply myths. They are explanations for the rhythm of the world. They are teachings. They tell us that pride leads to downfall, that no being, however bright, can escape the judgment of others, that even death is not an end, but part of a sacred rhythm that beats beneath the skin of the earth and sky. Even today, when the full moon rises over Arnhem Land, painting the waters in silver, the people remember. They tell the children, "That's Ngalindi, fat again. He'll be punished soon." Or they whisper, "Watch for the crocodile. He's coming." And when the moon disappears, they do not panic. They wait. They know the cycle will begin again, just as the tides return, just as the rivers rise, just as the dreaming never ends.
The Songlines. If you walk across Australia with open ears and a quiet spirit, you might hear them. Faint, like wind passing through spinifex, or like the soft pad of ancestral feet on red dust. They are not sung in one place alone. They ripple through gorges, shimmer over plains, and echo off desert rocks. They are the Songlines. Known by different names among different language groups, Juringa, Jugar, or simply tracks, the Songlines are more than songs. They are the ancient arteries of the land, spiritual highways that connect sacred places, people, and time itself. They are the stories the land sings to itself, passed down from the dreaming, and still alive in every gust of wind, every stone, every shimmering heat wave rising off the earth. In the beginning, the ancestral beings walked the world. They did not simply move, they created. With each step, they shaped the terrain, rivers, hills, billabongs, caves, and coastlines. But they did not do so in silence. As they walked, they sang, and what they sang came into being. A mountain would rise at the end of a verse. A tree would grow from a note held too long. A kangaroo would bound into life from a whispered lyric. The world was sung into form, not imagined, not built, but sung. And those songs remain. To follow a songline is to walk in the footsteps of the ancestors, literally. Each verse is a map, a set of coordinates encoded in story, rhythm, and melody. A person who knows the song can navigate vast distances without ever consulting a compass. The land becomes a score, and the walker becomes a musician, playing the story as they go. For instance, one songline stretches from Yirrkala in the northeast all the way to Uluru, thousands of kilometers to the southwest. It tells of a creation being who crossed the land, leaving behind springs, rock formations, and sacred places. A traveler on this route, with the song in their mind and heart, can find waterholes, shelter, and food, all revealed through the words of the ancestors. This is not abstract poetry. This is survival. This is law. Songlines carry knowledge, not just of geography, but of language, kinship, spiritual duties, and social obligations. They tell who you can marry, who your totem is, what stories belong to your people, and what responsibilities you carry. They are sacred archives, encoded into melody, and passed down orally through hundreds of generations. There are songlines in the stars too. The imu in the sky, the seven sisters, the constellations of the Yolngu, Arrernte, and Pitjantjatjara peoples, all form parts of song cycles that connect land and sky. As above, so below. The stars mirror the stories, guiding night travelers and anchoring ceremonies to their rightful time. But songlines are not just beautiful ideas. They are sacred obligations. To sing the land is to care for it. To forget the song is to risk losing the world itself. Without the song, the sight becomes mute. The spirit sleeps. The cycle breaks. That is why elders say, "We sing country to keep it alive." And the songs are not all the same. Each group along a songline may carry a different verse, a different language, a different dialect, even a different rhythm. But the story is shared. One song may begin in the saltwater country of the coast, sung in the rolling vowels of the sea people, and continue inland, where it picks up the dry, clipped tone of the desert mob. It is like a relay, the melody handed from one nation to the next, each responsible for a section, each trusted to remember. Imagine this.
A young boy, just initiated, is taken by his grandfather to a sacred rock. The old man hums a tune, soft at first, then stronger. The rock's shape matches a word in the song. The boy touches the stone and hums it back. This is how the learning begins, not in classrooms but in footsteps, repetition, and reverence. That song will stay with him forever. He will add to it, pass it on, protect it. But not everyone can sing every song. Each person inherits certain lines, from mother or father depending on the system. These lines are rights and responsibilities, not possessions. You cannot simply learn another group's song. You must be invited, trusted, initiated. For to sing a song line without permission is to disturb the balance, a serious offense in the eyes of the ancestors. And these are not relics of the past. Even today, across deserts and towns, songlines continue to shape movement. In the Western Desert, the Seven Sisters songline remains one of the most sacred and longest known. It follows the journey of a group of ancestral women fleeing a man who chases them across the country. Their travels form mountain ranges, waterholes, and valleys. Their final escape, into the sky, leaves the Pleiades shining overhead. Artists have painted their stories. Musicians have recorded the melodies. But the full meaning can only be understood within culture. In Anangu Pitjantjatjara Yankunytjatjara country, elders have fought to protect the tracks of these women, not for tourists, not for fame, but because those trails are alive. Bulldoze them, and you do not just harm the land, you sever the song. You silence the voices of the dreaming. And this is the core of songlines. They are not entertainment. They are not stories for bedtime. They are responsibilities. When you inherit a song, you inherit a duty to walk it, to sing it, to teach it, to never let it fade. And when you pass through country that is not yours, You seek permission. You ask for the right to walk the verse that someone else holds. It is a system of governance older than any parliament, a system of memory older than any written language, and a system of connection deeper than any road. Some say that if every songline were mapped and sung today, they would cover the entire continent, a vast, vibrating web of knowledge, wrapped around mountains, stitched through valleys, and threaded through every riverbed and rock. Even the roads of modern Australia follow them unknowingly. Highways curve where songlines curved. Train tracks follow old walking routes. Cities stand on crossroads where ancestral beings once met. And in the cracks beneath the noise, the songs still hum. If you stand quietly on red soil, close your eyes and listen, really listen, you may feel it. A rhythm in the soles of your feet, a word in the wind, a tune not yours but older than your name. The songlines are still here, still singing, still waiting.
The Battle of the Spirits. There are places in Australia where the wind never rests, where the red rocks jut out like broken teeth and the heat shimmers off the ground like ghost light. In these places, in the heart of the central desert, stories do not simply whisper, they roar. They twist through time and stone like fire through dry grass. One such story is that of the Battle of the Spirits. It is not a tale of empires or crowns, not a war for gold or land. It is a battle older than any kingdom, a battle of elemental spirits, of ancestral powers clashing not with weapons, but with will, with song, with the forces of the land itself. The land was not always still. In the dreaming, long before the sun and moon had found their rhythm, the center of the continent was a place of motion. It pulsed with energy. Spirits moved across the plains like clouds of dust, each one shaping, claiming, singing their part of the land into being. But not all spirits sang in harmony. Two great beings moved across this country. One came from the west, a spirit of dust and fire, a being of sun-soaked stone and fierce hunger. Its name has been lost in many tongues but remembered in form. A long, coiling figure made of red rock and burning breath. It was a being of passion, intensity, and destruction. From the east came another, cooler, but no less powerful. This spirit traveled with the wind and the water, its presence like the shade beneath a ghost gum, calm and steady. It sang with a deep voice, long and slow, like a didgeridoo echoing through empty gorges. It brought mist. It brought rain. It brought silence. The spirits met near the place we now call Juritja, the West MacDonnell Ranges, a sacred spine of ancient stone that stretches across the desert like the remains of a dreaming serpent. Each spirit claimed the land. Each believed their song was the one that should shape the country, and so the sky darkened, the ground cracked, and the battle began, not with fists or claws, but with elemental fury. The fire spirit raised the winds, swirling the dust into choking storms. Flames licked across the plains, devouring shrubs, blackening trees, chasing lizards back into stone. The water spirit sang back, and rain fell in torrents. It filled the gullies and soaked the sand, turning the fire to steam, the smoke to mist. Lightning cracked, thunder rolled, the sky turned purple, and the land trembled beneath them. In that clash, mountains rose, valleys were torn open, rocks were split like bread, and rivers carved their first wild paths across the desert. Even now, geologists will tell you the MacDonnell Ranges are over 300 million years old, but the people of the land know they were born of that great clash. Their scars are not just geological, they are spiritual. Among the Arrernte people, whose country lies in that very heartland, stories are told of how ancestral beings created the gaps in the ranges, places like Simpson's Gap, Stanley Chasm, and Ellery Creek Big Hole. Each one marks a strike, a meeting point, a wound left behind by battling spirits. One such spirit was Yeperenya, a giant caterpillar being, long and colorful, whose descendants still crawl the land in smaller form. Yeperenya carved through the stone as he fled from enemies, leaving behind deep cuts in the mountains. His journey became the songline that children still sing, hands gesturing the rise and fall of the land. The caterpillar was not alone.
Other ancestral beings joined the conflict. Some supported the fire, others backed the water. And as more spirits entered, the land changed further. Blood was spilled, not red, but in the form of ochre, scattered across the rocks. Their voices echoed into the earth, becoming the vibrations felt during ceremony and dance. One tale tells of a spirit woman caught between the warring sides. She was of the sky, a being of stars and quiet. She pleaded with the others to stop, to listen, but neither side would yield. In her grief, she threw herself into a gorge, and from her tears, a spring was born, clear, cool, and eternal. It still runs today. They say you can feel her sorrow in its waters. The battle raged until exhaustion fell over the land like dusk. Neither spirit had won, neither had been destroyed, but both had been changed. The fire spirit retreated into the rocks, its breath now sleeping beneath the heat of the day. You can feel it when you walk barefoot across sun-warmed stone. It still hums, waiting, watching. The water spirit sank into the rivers and gorges. In the dry season, it vanishes, but when the rains come, it returns, full and swift, reminding the land that it is never truly gone. And the woman, the star spirit, she rose into the sky, becoming a cluster of stars that the Arrante watch to this day. Her eyes blink down as the desert sleeps, her body a reminder of the cost of pride and power. Now, when storms roll across the central desert, when lightning flashes over the ridges and water pours through the gorges, the people remember. They say, "The spirits are talking again." Elders teach the young that the land is alive with memory. The cracks in the rock, that's where a spear struck. The sudden bend in the creek, that's where a spirit turned, fleeing. The red of the cliffs, that's the heat of fire, cooled by time. This is not legend, this is law. The story is a map. The map is the country, and the country is alive. Even now, when tourists walk through the West MacDonnell Ranges, they often speak of the strange silence, the heaviness in the air, the way sound travels strangely through the stone. They are walking through memory, through a battlefield older than time, and in every gust of wind, every echo between the rocks, the battle continues, not in violence, but in balance. For that is what the dreaming teaches, that even conflict has a purpose, that from fire and water, destruction and creation, the land is shaped, and it is our duty to remember, to walk gently, to listen, to keep the story alive.
He, the spirit of light. In the beginning, before warmth ever kissed the earth, and before color lit the leaves of trees, the world sat in darkness, not evil or cold, simply still and untouched. It was a time before light had a name, and before eyes could see the shape of the land. Beneath this blanket of shadow, all things lay sleeping. And then, she opened her eyes. Her name was He. She was the spirit of light, the bringer of life, and the awakening of all things bright and warm. Among the Gamilaroi and Kamilaroi peoples of northern New South Wales, Ihi's story has been told and sung for countless generations. She is not simply the sun. She is light in its truest form, radiant, nourishing, and deeply alive. It is said that she awoke in the sky, stirred by a whisper in the darkness, a silent call, not words, but yearning. The earth, still wrapped in shadow, had dreamed of her, and so she rose. With her first breath, the darkness cracked. With her first glance, the shadows fled. Her light spread across the land like song through still air. It moved through the trees that hadn't yet grown, and danced over hills that had not yet risen. Everything was potential. Yi's light gave it form. She traveled slowly at first, gently, as if not to startle what lay beneath. Wherever her foot touched, warmth followed. Wherever her gaze fell, color bloomed. She brought gold to the sand. She painted blue into the sky. She scattered green across the fields and stirred the waters until they shimmered like mirrors. But Yi did not create for her own glory. She created for joy. She wanted company. She wanted to fill the silence with song, to watch the world dance. So she descended to the land, stepping softly onto the soil. The earth welcomed her. And then she sang. Her voice was unlike anything that had come before. It rang clear and high, a melody made of light itself. It hummed through the rock, rippled through the rivers, and echoed across the plains. Wherever her song traveled, life woke up. Seeds stirred in the soil, leaves unfurled, flowers turned their faces to the sky, and the first animals rose. They blinked in the new light, unsure of what they were, but he smiled and sang again, and the creatures stretched, moved, and found themselves. Kangaroos bounded. Koalas blinked slowly from the trees. Platypuses blinked and wobbled toward the water. Some say she created each creature from a shadow left behind in the light. Others say they were sleeping before, and it was her song that gave them shape and breath. But not all welcomed her touch. In the deepest cracks of the land, shadows clung. There, in the dark places untouched by her song, creatures stirred, twisted and cold, made not of hate, but of refusal. They did not want light. They wanted silence. He, ever gentle, approached them. She offered warmth. They hissed and curled back. She reached with kindness. They bared teeth. And so she let them be. She understood that not all must walk in light, that even darkness had its place. She turned, and as she left, some of those beings followed her in secret, staying at the edge of her glow, forming the first myths of night hunters, cave creatures, and beings of the dusk. But Yi continued. As she journeyed further, she met resistance, not from darkness, but from cold. A great frost lay across the southern lands, still untouched. Her light shivered, weakened. The plants drooped, the earth trembled. And so, Yi called upon fire, not destruction, but warmth.
From within her spirit, she summoned a glow, a flame that danced with joy. She placed it into the heart of the land, and from it came the first hearths, the warmth that would allow people to gather even when her face was turned away. This was her gift, life not just in presence, but in memory. Even when the sun sets, even when Yihi retreats beneath the horizon, her warmth lingers in the fire. Her song hums in the blood of all living things. But her work was not done. She looked around and saw that the animals were all alike. They walked the same, moved the same. They were joyful, but they were not yet distinct. So Yi whispered into their ears. To the kangaroo, she said, "You will leap." To the cockatoo, "You will scream bright colors into the sky." To the lizard, "You will warm yourself on rocks and wait patiently." She gave each creature not just shape, but purpose. Then she turned her gaze to the humans. They had not yet opened their eyes. They were still stone and soil, silent and waiting. Yi knelt beside them and sang her gentlest song. They stirred, they sat. They looked into her face, and for the first time knew love. She smiled and gave them language so they could name the world. She gave them fire so they could survive the cold. She gave them dreaming, not sleep, but the ability to remember the past and imagine the future. And then Yi rose into the sky. She did not stay on the earth. She belonged above, where she could see all. From that day forward, she traveled from east to west, lighting the world as she moved, resting only when she slipped beneath the edge of the land. And each night, the world cooled. The creatures rested. The people sang her praises around the fire. But always she returned. With each dawn, Yihi reminded the world of its promise. She reminded the people that life must be lived with warmth, purpose, and joy. And the land, in gratitude, continued to bloom. Even now, when the first light spills over the horizon and touches the tops of trees, the elders say, "Yi walks again." They teach the children to greet her with a smile, to feel her warmth as more than sunlight, as spirit. And when the sun is high and strong, when the land glows and the air shimmers, Yi is not just overhead. She is within everything. She is the movement in the grass, the shimmer on the water, the laughter of a child, the fire in the belly of the earth. She is life, sung into being, walking across the sky. The Seven Sisters. If you find yourself under the night sky in the heart of the desert, no buildings, no cars, just the crunch of sand beneath your boots, and you look up toward the eastern horizon, you'll see them. A tight cluster of stars, glittering like scattered pearls, small but bright. They sit together, always together, never far from one another. They are known across the world as the Pleiades. But in Australia, among many Aboriginal nations, including the Pitjantjatjara, Yankunytjatjara, Arrernte, Yolngu, and Warramungu peoples, they are remembered as the Seven Sisters, and they are running. Their story is old, so old, in fact, that it stretches back not only through oral history, but across the continents. Variations of the tale echo through other First Nations in North America, across the Pacific, and through ancient Asia. But here, on this land, the Seven Sisters are more than myth. They are ancestral women, spirit beings from the dreaming, whose footprints are embedded in stone and whose flight is etched into the stars. Their journey begins with song. The sisters were powerful, not just beautiful, but wise, strong, and connected to country. Each had her own gifts. One could sing the rain, another could find water in dry places. One spoke the language of animals, another shaped ochre from the earth. They were leaders, travelers, protectors. They walked together across the desert, following a sacred path, a songline that wound from the west to the east. Along the way, they danced, laughed, and left behind stories etched in the landscape: stone circles, caves, waterholes, and sandhills. But they were not alone. They were being followed. A man, a spirit being named Wati Nyiru, had seen them, and he became obsessed. Wati Nyiru was not evil in the way that villains are told in children's books. He was a man out of balance, a man whose desire grew stronger than his law. He wanted the sisters, one in particular, though the stories differ as to which. He saw her dancing under the moonlight, her feet red with ochre, her laughter lifting into the sky, and he could not let go. He followed them across the land. Sometimes he walked, sometimes he transformed. He became a tree, standing just outside their camp. He became a rock, resting beside a waterhole. He became an emu, circling near the fire, always watching, always approaching. The sisters knew he was near. They warned one another. They kept moving, singing the land into being as they fled. Their songline became a chase, a trail of escape and cunning. Every bend in the range, every sudden canyon, every pool of water, marks of where they turned, rested, or hid. Wati Nyiru was clever, but the sisters were more so. They used the land like a shield. They called upon ancestor spirits to create deep crevices in the ground. They climbed sheer cliff faces. They disappeared into caves. Sometimes they split apart to confuse him, then reunited beneath the stars. But still, he followed. In some parts of the story, Wati Nyiru tricks them. He sings a deceitful song. He changes his form. He tries to lure one of the sisters away with promises. And in some versions, darker ones, he succeeds briefly, but only briefly. Because the sisters, even when separated, are never alone. Their bond is stronger than magic, and in the end, they turn their eyes to the sky. They ask the Great Spirit, the Sky Father, to save them, and he does. With one great breath, he lifts them from the earth, places them among the stars, and scatters them across the heavens. Their bodies become light. Their songline continues in the Milky Way, and Wandjina, he too is lifted, to chase them forever as a star or constellation that follows behind. Now, when you look up into the sky and see the seven sisters rising in the east, followed by a lone bright star or group of stars to the west, you're seeing the chase play out again. The stars hold the memory, the land holds the path, and the people hold the story. Along the Chukurpa, the dreaming law of the Pitjanchachara and Yankunichachara, the Seven Sisters' journey crosses hundreds of kilometers. Rock art at places like Ngarujaranya, Mount Olga, and Watiawanu, Mount Liebig, tells of their passage. Ceremonial sites are still visited, and women's songs continue to be sung in their honor. This is not a story only for children. It is women's law. It is cosmic and intimate all at once. The sisters' journey is not just a chase. It is a lesson in resilience, a lesson in respect, a lesson in the strength of kinship, that no matter how fast the hunter, those who walk together can outpace danger. But there is also sorrow, because in the sky the sisters are not at rest. They are always moving, always looking over their shoulders, always being followed. And the people watching from Earth remember that tension. There is longing in the stars, there is grief in the chase, but there is also brilliance, seven lights that have not faded. When the sisters rise, it marks the start of winter in many regions, the time when food becomes scarcer, when warmth is harder to find. It is a season of survival and remembrance. Women prepare ceremonies, elders teach the songs, and children are reminded never to take without consent, never to chase what does not belong to you. Wandjina's obsession is not glorified, it is a warning. His presence in the sky is not celebration, it is consequence. The sisters, though pursued, are honored. And every night, when they rise in the eastern sky, the land glows with memory. Even now, satellites and scientists marvel at the Pleiades, measuring their distance, around 440 light-years from Earth. But the first peoples do not need numbers to know their power. They are close in the stories. They are close in the heart. They are the sisters who still flee, who still dance, who still guide. And when you walk beneath the starlight and feel a cool wind stir, you are not alone. They are above you, running and watching.
The Guardians of Uluru. In the center of Australia, rising from the flat ochre earth like a memory turned to stone, stands Uluru, massive, red, and sacred. It is not just a rock. It is a being, a presence, a spirit that watches and remembers. To some, it's a geological wonder, formed over millions of years from shifting sands and pressured stone. To the Anangu people, whose Chukurpa, or dreaming law, defines and shapes all life, Uluru is a living entity, a site of deep cultural, spiritual, and ancestral importance. And within this great heart of the land dwell the Guardians, ancestral beings who walk the earth in the Dreamtime, and whose spirits remain in every curve, every crack, every shadow that passes across the stone. Uluru is not a story. Uluru is many stories, layered, connected, and alive. Each crevice on its face is a mark of movement, a scar of transformation, a trace of a battle or a sacred moment that shaped the land. The Anangu know them all. Each is a lesson, each a warning, and each part of the larger song that still echoes across the desert. One such story begins in the time before time, when the land was soft and unformed, and ancestral beings moved across it with purpose. Some came as people, some as animals, some as forces of wind, fire, or thought. Their footprints created rivers, their resting places became mountains, and their deeds became law. The Mala people, a group of ancestral beings in the form of rufous hair wallabies, came from the north. They traveled with ceremony, carrying sacred items, churungas, and seeking a place to hold an initiation. They found it at Uluru. They built their ceremonial grounds there, marked by sacred rocks and dancing circles, and prepared for a great ritual. But before they could begin, messengers arrived from the west. Other beings, the Kurpani, spirits in the form of a great monstrous dog, invited them to bring their ceremony to a different place. The Mala refused. Ceremony had begun. And once sacred law was set in motion, it could not be interrupted. The Kurpani did not accept this. They unleashed the monstrous spirit beast upon the Mala. The creature tore across the desert, howling with anger, scattering dust and fire, its footsteps cracking the ground. The Mala fought to defend their sacred site. They ran, they scattered, but many were killed. Their cries still echo in the canyons that flank Uluru. Their spirit forms are still seen in the rock, a row of upright stones that mark the dancers, forever frozen in time. Others are etched into overhangs, hidden from tourists, but visible to those who carry the song. The Kurpani's claw marks can be seen too, deep gashes across the face of Uluru, as if something with great fury tried to tear the stone apart. They are not symbols. They are stories, left as reminders. Other guardians dwell within the stone. To the south lies the story of the Kunia, the Woma python woman, who traveled from the east with her eggs, spirit children, resting in her belly. She sought a safe place, somewhere sacred to lay them. She found it in a cave on the side of Uluru. But she was not alone. A liru, or poisonous snake man, followed her. He represented a different law, one of violence and disruption. He attacked one of Kunia's nephews, killing him near the base of the rock. When Kunia learned of this, her sorrow became rage. She confronted the liru on the slopes of Uluru, and there, in a battle both physical and spiritual, she struck him with her digging stick. Her blow left a scar, a long, curved groove on the face of the stone that can still be seen today.
But the fight was not just vengeance. It was law. It was a demonstration of responsibility, of standing against wrong, even when it brings pain. Kunia's cave remains a sacred place. Women's ceremonies are still held there. The spirit of the Python woman is not a tale of bloodshed. It is a lesson in kinship, protection, and the power of sacred duty. And there are others. On the western side, stories speak of Lungkata, the blue-tongued lizard man, who broke sacred hunting law by stealing a goanna that was not his to take. When confronted, he lied and fled, taking refuge on the slopes of Uluru. The rightful hunter found him, tracked him through the sand, and set fire to the area around the base of the rock. Lungkata climbed higher, but the fire followed. It is said he fell to his death, and the place where his body landed remains a sacred formation to this day. These stories are not metaphor. They are law. They are the reason certain areas of Uluru are closed to visitors, not out of secrecy, but out of protection. Some parts are men's business, others are women's. The land itself holds gendered knowledge, and to disturb it without understanding is not only disrespectful, but dangerous. The Anangu people are not gatekeepers. They are caretakers. They carry the stories because the land has asked them to. They do not own Uluru. They are its family. That is why climbing Uluru, once common among tourists, was never simply a harmless act. It was a trespass on the back of a being. It was a footprint on sacred skin. In 2019, after decades of quiet protest and patient education, the climb was finally closed. The Anangu did not celebrate with banners or cheers. They stood quietly. They watched. And the rock, for the first time in generations, was allowed to breathe. Uluru is still visited, as it should be, but now it is approached with reverence, walked around, not over, greeted like an elder, not conquered like a peak. At night, when the stars rise and the winds whisper across the dunes, the guardians still stir. Kunia watches from her cave. The mala dancers stand in their silent circle. The Kurpani prowls in dreams, a warning to those who would disrupt the sacred, and the stories are sung again. Children are taught not just where the rock stands, but why it matters. Not just what happened there, but who still lives within it. Because Uluru is not a monument, it is a library, a council of ancestors, a body of law, and it is alive.
The circle completes. Time is not a straight line. Not here. Not in the red heart of Australia. Not in the canopies of the top end. Not in the salt-sprayed stories of the coast. Among the first peoples of this land, time is a circle, vast, patient, and always returning to itself. There is no beginning that isn't also an ending, no ending that isn't also a beginning. This is the dreaming. This is the circle. And now, we have come to the closing of the tale. Not the end of the dream time, for that does not end, but the completion of a journey through generations, across sky and stone, fire and water. From the coiling birth of the rainbow serpent, to the sky-dancing seven sisters, to the guardians etched into Uluru's sacred skin, all have played their part. Each story, each ancestor, each spirit has left behind more than footprints. They've left law. They've left connection. They've left duty. It is said that when the ancestral beings had finished shaping the land, they didn't vanish. They returned to the earth, the sky, the sea, not to disappear, but to become. A rock, a wind, a bend in the river, a cluster of stars. They are still here. They are the land. This is why, when an Aboriginal person says they are from a place, they don't mean by address. They mean it literally. Their ancestors are in that rock. Their dreaming comes from that hill. Their story, their song, is woven into the very grain of the earth. And now, that story has been shared with you. Not all of it. No one may ever hold it all. But enough to begin understanding. Enough to listen. Enough to know that these tales are not myths to be collected, but responsibilities to be carried. They are still performed in ceremony, still sung around fires, still walked across thousands of kilometers of land in ancient paths, the songlines that keep the world in balance. We must not forget that the dreaming is not the past. It is always. It is here. It is in the whisper of the bush before dawn. It is in the eagle's shadow as it passes over the hills. It is in the call of the magpie, and in the silence that follows it. And now, as you sit, still, calm, quiet, you are part of it. You are part of the circle. You have walked with spirits. You have flown with eagles, danced with sisters through the stars, sung rivers into being with ancestral voices. You have remembered. And in doing so, you help the dreaming live. Because to remember these stories is to honor them. To honor them is to protect them. And to protect them is to protect the land itself. For as long as people listen, as long as feet touch country with care, as long as words are spoken with respect, the Dreamtime continues. It sings on. It sings in you. And so, the circle is complete. Thank you for walking this path with me, across stars and rivers, deserts and sky, spirit and story. These Dreamtime tales are not just ancient memories. They are living truths, held by the first peoples of this continent since time immemorial. It is a privilege to share even a glimpse of them, and an even greater responsibility to treat them with respect. If you felt something stir within you, a deeper appreciation, a stillness, or even just curiosity, that's the dreaming reaching you. It doesn't shout. it whispers. Before you drift off to sleep, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps the stories continue. It helps the circle grow. And remember, the land is not silent. It sings, in the language of the ancestors, in the footprints of spirit beings, and in stories just like these. Sleep well now, and let the dreaming carry you. Good night.